Welcome. Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles. Today, from boardroom to backbone, mastering high-stake exits and infrastructure, primarily energy, behind AI. Our special guest today is Paul Burgon, managing partner of Exit Ventures, with what's the real state of America, meaning USA, our power grid, and why is no one talking, from my perspective, enough about it?
Okay, good. Great question. So the core issue is that with the growth of AI and the electrify everything movement, not just EVs, but how do we electrify core industries, heavy industries in some cases, steel, concrete, everything, cement, everything. How do we electrify everything? That's putting tremendous load strain on the grid. Energy utilities, electric utilities are used to having demand grow 1, 2, maybe 3% a year for decades. So you can imagine, Angela, if you've got a very slow moving, very stable industry with the electric utilities, and then you add AI and electrify everything, all of a sudden they're looking at demand forecasts of 7, 8, 9%, which doesn't sound like a lot to a family business that's been growing 5 to 10% a year. But for utilities that have to invest in hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars to generate new power facilities in a sleepy industry that is not used to moving quickly at all, this is creating a crisis environment where many utilities are now caught flat-footed. They don't have the generation capacity to keep up, and they're going out on the spot market and they're buying electricity on the spot market to cover them when they don't have enough, and they're paying 10 to 100 times more than their cost to generate power, because now they're forced to buy it on spot, and now everybody's buying on spot. So you have a situation where the supply is limited. It can't grow very quickly because it takes years to build a new power facility. And then you've got demand growing much faster. And so you've got this gap between supply and demand. And the biggest impact that AI will have, other than, how easily it makes us, do the hard things, is the demand on the grid. And so people are talking about, what do we do? And the hyperscalers, the Amazon, the Microsoft, Googles of the world, are snapping up power generation facilities as fast as they can, or they're signing up contracts for that available power as fast as they can. But there's not enough generation supply to meet the demand. And that's why you've got 3 Mile Island, a nuclear, 3 Mile Island nuclear facility that has been idled, that is now being brought back to life by Microsoft. You've got intense interest in any kind of power, whether it's renewable or not, because AI just needs power and we're not going to have enough. And so what I'm worried about, the short answer is, in 3 to 4 years, the forecasts look pretty ugly. That AI continues its very strong growth, electrify everything continues its very strong growth. We've outstripped the whatever small amount of capacity exists in the country's system. We've soaked that up, and we're not able to put stuff online, generation online, fast enough. And there are some scenarios where we're talking about brownouts in 3, 4, 5 years because we cannot put generation assets online fast enough. And that's the macro perspective we're looking at.
Wow. Well, that brings up a lot of questions. Where do you see, where are these biggest choke points? You mentioned generation, probably number one, but as you know, in my little bit of knowledge, I could also say cooling, storage, transmission.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we could put on our investment hat here and say, what public and private companies, knowing what you said is the big picture macro, knowing the choke points and challenges that I noted, therein lies potentially the opportunity. So I'll allow you to go in multiple different directions, from clarifying generation, cooling, storage, and transmission, to looking at it from the little bit of the investing perspective, what opportunities are now out there.
Yep, there are so many opportunities out there because of the need. So you're right. It's not just generation. Generation is kind of the root cause, but you have transmission lines where they're 40, 50 years old. They're at the end of their life. In many cases across the country, they're not built for this. And it takes many years to build new transmission lines. It just does in the United States because of regulatory and lawsuits. It's very difficult. Storage. Now, the good news is probably I would say half or more of the solar panel facilities, large scale solar facilities that are implemented now are being implemented with some sort of battery storage system, which helps our ability to serve the peak hours on the grid. But that's a drop in the bucket compared to what is needed across the country. So you have opportunities in generation, transmission, storage,
Exactly.
and also what's called peak shaving, which is how do we bring down the demand curve during peak hours, and how do we flatten that curve so that the utilities don't have to go out and buy so much power on the spot market, almost on a daily basis in some cases. So there's a very wide range of opportunities. Large corporations are digging in very quickly. So GE Vernova, right? They make the natural gas turbines that everyone needs to provide large amounts of electricity. They've now got, I think they've got a 2 to 3 year backlog and in some cases, maybe more for their gas turbines. So people are saying, well, I need to go buy a turbine and build a facility. Well, guess what? You can't even buy one for the next 2 to 3 years in many cases, not always, but in many cases. Putting in new lines, putting in new transmission lines can take 5 to 7 years to get them approved, designed, permitted, approved, and then get through litigation because no one wants.
If you don't mind, Paul, now I'm going to be the Mr. Libertarian conservative prick. I hear what you're saying. I know it's true. My audience knows I'm extremely active in the world of AI, and I'm active in geopolitical issues. This is a war, cold for the moment, between the US and China. We lose the AI war. We lose the advent of AGI and artificial super intelligence because we can't manufacture comparative to the no guardrails of China and the energy production. We get whipped from them being able to manufacture things at practically no cost. We would be priced out of the market. God knows what's going to happen with other forms of alternative energy that could, in the future, bring energy costs way down, and we're not going to be a leader in it. Defense-wise, biotech, we fall so far behind, there may never be a chance to recover. And you're telling me, even in the current administration, that we're bogged down by political bifurcation, regulation, and lawsuits. We won't win. Like if something doesn't happen, I don't know how Elon was able to build, what was it in Tennessee, that massive data centers so quickly. And that technically was under the Biden administration. If we don't have certain things that change, we will lose to China. And I know we're getting into my bandwidth of geopolitical now, but nonetheless, I'm bringing you into it.
I agree with you. Look, the issue is we have an advantage. We've had an advantage in AI. The advantage is getting chipped away, but we do have a leading advantage in AI right now. The problem, as you stated, is if we don't have the hardware to support the AI generation, right? You need hardware and software. And I keep telling people this, like, we have a lead in AI, but if you can't build the data centers in order to keep that lead, China will then take the lead because they are able to outcompute. They have the raw compute that we don't. And once you get that lead, it's very difficult to let us catch up, right? And especially with quantum computing, when we've got AI and quantum computing that need real hardware resources, and we are in a position where we may not be able to build the backbone to support a leading AI and quantum computing edge, we are in a very real jam where we may lose, not because of the quality of AI, but because of the quality of the hardware backbone. And that's a bitter pill to swallow, frankly, but it's something that we're looking down the barrel of something that's not very appetizing right now.
Everything that you think about, if they, and they're definitely ahead in quantum, they get certain edges to crack codes and banks, financial institutions, Bitcoin, etc. Like it might be kind of over. No, maybe not overly literally, but in terms of us being the domineering world power, we would definitely take a secondary role. We would have massive upheaval to our financial systems. You could then imagine the civil upheaval that we'll have in the country. Imagine banks being closed down, shut down, ATM's not working. You have whatever 700,000 in your 401k. You go there and technically it was liquidated. I'm not saying you may not be able to do a trail and get that back, but imagine that happening a million times over and over. It's going to overwhelm the system. I know some of you feel, I wish I could slow the march of AI down. I wish we could have guardrails. And trust me, in my heart, I do really kind of hear you, but that's just not realistic to how the world works and the competition that we're having at the moment. We do that, they won't, we lose, and calamity happens. I don't know if there's any easy way out of this ball. Maybe and maybe we'll pull it back to the investing side a little bit now. What could I do as an allocator? What are we looking at here in the US, maybe Canada, broadly North America? How could we be competitive? What could I do and how could I profit? Is it oil? Is it alternative energy? Is it clean tech? Is it solar? At least I get certain tax advantages. What could I do as an allocator?
Yep, no, that's great. So what we can do is we can pressure policymakers to wake up. Some have woken up and some are extremely concerned about this issue. Some I think are more engaged in petty politics than they are the real long-term strategic position of our country. And I genuinely believe that conflicts of interest in our electoral system are creating real long-term and midterm problems for us. The good news is that, Trump, whether you're a fan or not, and I'm not saying I am or I'm not, but he, last week or 10 days ago, signed an executive order trying to accelerate the pace of nuclear innovation and deployment through executive order. That should be very helpful in deploying nuclear power assets more quickly than they would otherwise be deployed. And after that executive order, I've heard just secondhand that over $100 million has been raised just in nuclear because of, and as a direct result of that executive order that makes it more easy to invest in, test, prove nuclear electricity assets. And so that will help. It's probably not going to help in the market in terms of power generation for the next 5 years or maybe more, but it will help at some point. What can you do as an allocator? You can invest in, frankly, look, I see it every day. I'll say it again. I'm singing from my own book, but private equity and venture capital and other investors are raising money for energy assets. And we need hard physical assets, frankly, more than we need a next version of AI that helps generate a pretty picture. Literally, I'm a little frustrated about how many people are so interested in non-core applications of AI and investing money that could go to extremely urgent needs. The extremely urgent needs are the infrastructure and continued development of key strategic AI. Making a funny picture and gaming based on AI is not where we need to put our money. I mean, honestly, just get so frustrated. We're looking at a crisis here, and a lot of investors that I know are investing in gaming and, AI photo and video editing. And I'm like, that's not going to help anybody in 5 years. So think strategically as an allocator. I mean, look, we are raising money for the peak. We're about to invest in a peak shaving technology that's very interesting. The one company alone has the potential to save literally terawatts of power across the entire country. When you start talking about terawatts of power, that's what we need. We're about to invest in this company in a couple of weeks. Like the bigger our fund was, the more frankly we could invest. That gets this company on a better footing. Like that is critical action that you can take as an allocator, is ask investment managers, what are you going to do with the money? Are you investing in absolutely core strategic needs? Or are you investing in what I call frivolous stuff that frankly isn't going to help the strategic direction of this country?
What is and maybe you already mentioned this actually, but the one infrastructure bet that a successful investor family could make now, but they probably aren't. They're overlooking at it. Now, you noted they're putting it broadly into AI and gaming, and they should be putting it into more infrastructure. If you could give a little bit more detail.
Sure, yeah. So you've got large corporate interests that are playing in certain areas, right, where a family office investor may or may not be able to play. Generation is a very big ticket item. Utilities and now the hyperscalers and very, very large investors are getting into that game. The family office probably isn't going to, get into building a 500 megawatt, power facility, right? That's off the table. But family offices that I know are investing in nuclear, whether it's fission or fusion technologies that theoretically could come to the market, within 5, in my opinion, up to 15 years. I think, just my opinion, fusion is a longer term bet. SMRs or small modular reactors are a more near term bet in terms of nuclear if you want to do power generation. That's something that you can look at, and a bunch of family offices that I know are actively looking at or investing in SMR nuclear technology in order to try and bring that to the market sooner. You can look at different types of emerging technologies. There's lots of emerging technologies across the board in generation, transmission, storage. One of the biggest opportunities, in my opinion, is storage. For the average investor, because storage is not being dominated by large corporate interests other than lithium in China, but there will be challenges to lithium. I'm confident of that, given its limitations, and there will be other market segments where lithium can't really serve. I think storage, power storage, can be very interesting. Transmission technologies may or may not be, frankly, because that's dominated by very large corporate interests. I think a lot of the AI tools, software tools for power generation, for power storage and transmission, lots of room there. And so I would say, both venture and private equity are putting a lot of money into this. Ask your managers where they're putting their money, and if it seems like a good fit to you, or look at SPVs, like I said, SPVs and co-invests. You could invest directly into very specific projects, knowing exactly what your money is going into on this stage. And we're doing that, and many other managers are doing that. And I think that's frankly not a bad solution.